Oh look, it's the vampire that teaches you how to play wargames. Hello, I'm Christian von Carmian, and this is about the primary and secondary missions that are part of the Armageddon Chapter Approved 2026 to 2027 mission deck. I don't know what the core rulebook will have in terms of mission rules. There could be an only war mission, but ideally, like in 7th edition, there should be a printed version of the mission deck in that book. And you can play, a little bit awkwardly, but without the mission deck. That's too much of an ask, of course. The core rulebook being the only part of the core rules you need to play the game, laughable for Games Workshop. So you also have to buy the mission deck and a codex. Primary missions. Completing these primary and secondary missions is how you get victory points. Victory points are how you win the game. You can have a maximum of 45 points from primary mission and 45 points from the secondaries. That is different from 10th edition, which had a primary mission which was more important than the secondary missions. The primary mission had a 50 victory point cap, the secondary missions had a 40 victory point cap. Secondary missions are slightly more important. Okay, primary mission. Your primary mission is determined from your force disposition, and your detachments determine your force disposition. If your army is made up of multiple detachments with multiple symbols, you get to choose which one is your force disposition. So if you are playing a 1,500 point game, which we've been told is incursion size, in incursion games, you can spend up to 2 detachment points. So if you had 2 1-point detachments, one of them was a take and hold disposition, the other one was reconnaissance, you pick before the game starts which one is your army's force disposition. This can let you take the same army, but play a different primary mission each time. Or play the other primary mission, and alternate between them if you so wished. If you were playing 2,000 points and had an army that was all 3 of the 1 detachment point detachments, then there's potentially 3 force dispositions to pick from. Unless you play in casual play mode, and then you choose any of the 5 dispositions. It doesn't matter which detachment you use. And oh look, the unified way to play that Games Workshop promised for this edition is immediately split into casual play and matched play. I doubt these terms will be well defined by Games Workshop. Is match play tournament only? Is going to a club to play a stranger match play or casual play? And I don't know which version will be printed in the rules that come with the mission deck. Nor do I think these terms will be defined or included in the mission deck. That has been a big annoyance I've had for 10th edition, that there seem to be many different ways to play, with various different rule sets, and which one you use in which situation is not well defined. So however your force disposition is chosen, the force disposition you've got is paired up against the force disposition of your opponent, and each player has their own way of scoring. It's not the same primary mission for both players if you have different force dispositions. So it's not like a lot of the previous editions of 40k where most of the missions had you doing the same thing. You would each have to do exactly the same thing to score victory points. Now there's a little bit of difference. If you were take and hold and your opponent was purge the foe, your primary mission is immovable object, their primary mission is unstoppable force. So victory is achieved by scoring your own primary mission and trying to deny the enemy from scoring their primary mission. Usually by killing the enemy units, but not exclusively. Your force disposition has a theme, and these are very broad categories. Take and hold, why I think I want to take some objectives and hold them. The force dispositions theme gives you an indicator of the kind of thing you're doing, then the specifics of what you're doing depends on which opponent you're facing. So if you were a purge the foe disposition and your opponent was take and hold, you get 3 victory points if 1 or more enemy units were destroyed this turn. That's scored at the end of your turn, in any battle round, and from the second battle round onwards. For each objective you control in your command phase, you get 4 victory points. And at the end of your turn, if you control 1 or more objectives you didn't control at the start of your turn, excluding your home objective, you get 3 victory points. And then at the end of the battle, you get 5 victory points if you control 1 or more central objectives. If you are against a disruption force, you play the punishment mission. At the start of your turn, you pick 3 enemy units that are within range of objectives or that destroyed one of your units in the previous turn. They are condemned. If you kill them or make them leave the battlefield, you get 5 victory points, and then also, from the second battle round onwards, at the end of your command phase, if you control 1 or more objectives, excluding a home objective, that's 4 victory points. If you control more objectives than your opponent, it's 5 victory points. Then at the end of the battle, instead of trying to get the central objective, you're trying to control your opponent's home objective, and that gives you 8 victory points. And if your opponent is instead a priority assets disposition, you play Destroyer's Wrath as your primary mission. If you destroyed 1 or more enemy units during the turn, you get 3 victory points. In your command phase, if you control one or more objectives, you get 4 victory points. If you control more objectives than your opponent, that's another 6 victory points. And if more enemy units were destroyed this turn than friendly units, you get another 4 victory points. This one has no end of game scoring for you. But you see the theme. You always want to be killing some enemy units, you always want to control some objectives in your command phase, and those are the main 2 ways you get victory points. Killing enemies, taking objectives. It's pretty simple for Purge the Foe. Priority assets are a bit different. Yes, at the end of the command phase from the second battle round onwards, if you control one or more objectives, excluding your home, you get 4 victory points. This is a running theme through all of the missions, regardless of disposition. But where it differs, in the Extract Relic mission, you want to perform a sensor sweep, and you want to destroy enemy units that started on objectives, and you directly want to stop the enemy from doing their primary mission. You want to get rid of the Disruption player's operation markers. In the Vanguard Operation mission, you want to perform the Vanguard Operation action, and you want to destroy some units, but still, second battle round onwards, you control one or more objectives, excluding your home objective. But then you get 10 victory points if you control your opponent's home objective. And Vital Link is what you play against Destroyer's Wrath, that mission that would be done by your Purge the Foe opponent. They're trying to kill you and take objectives. You're not doing actions this time, you're trying to take the central objective, still control some objectives, but you get more points if you control the center. And then at the end, you want to control your opponent's home objective. But the continuing theme, score victory points from holding objectives, and also there's an action to do in some way on the objectives. And take and hold missions double down on the take objectives. Determined acquisition, for each objective you control that you did not control at the start of your turn, get 2 victory points for each one. And then at the end of your command phase, you get 3 victory points for each objective you control. Each one, not one or more. And if those objectives are in your opponent's territory, which is their half of the board, an extra 3 victory points. In a movable object, it's very similar to your opponent. Take objectives, but you get more victory points for taking and holding the objectives, whereas they get some victory points for objectives and bonus victory points for killing you. Take and hold is all about those objectives. So you can tailor your army towards what your primary mission will want you to do. And understandably, the Force Disposition should be tied to the strengths of your detachment. It will be a very badly done detachment that is all about tanks, and it is a disruption force that wants you to complete a lot of actions. Or a slow-moving Terminator-focused detachment would be bad if it was reconnaissance and wanted you to keep the enemy out of your deployment zone. While there is a running theme throughout the detachments, you're going to kill enemies, control objectives, perform actions. The degree to which the primary mission wants you to do each of these is determined mainly by the disposition. Pick a Force Disposition that suits your playstyle. The detachments you are playing the most will probably have a suitable disposition for the units it supports, so you don't have to think too much about it. But when you have multiple detachments in your army and Force Dispositions to choose from, do you have enough speed and infiltrators for reconnaissance? Enough objective control for take and hold? Do you have the Christian von Carmian sticker sheet to mark hidden units and where relics are? There's a merch link in the description. Despite Purge the Foe giving you more victory points for killing than other Force Dispositions, you shouldn't go all out on murder squads. You have to take objectives. You have to stop the enemy from completing their primary mission. And although the primary missions for Purge the Foe don't have you performing actions, the secondary missions do. A balanced force is required because half the victory points come from secondary missions. Don't skip over them. So secondary missions. You can choose whether to have fixed or tactical secondaries. Real gamer people pick tactical, which has you draw cards to randomly determine your secondary missions each turn. If you choose fixed, some of the secondary missions have a fixed symbol in the bottom left, and those can be taken as fixed missions. You don't discard fixed missions, you can score them over and over. So if your opponent has a lot of character models and you have a lot of units in your army, choose Assassination and engage on all fronts. The mission deck will tell you how many of them to pick at the start of the game. In 10th edition, it was 2. A fixed mission is worth different victory points than if you picked it as a tactical mission. The fixed version is worth fewer victory points each time you do the thing it wants you to do, but you have the knowledge of what you will have to do in your next turn and can set up for that. If your army does one thing really well, you can score based on that. So maybe you do want a Purge the Foe disposition and you go for Assassination and bring it down as your fixed missions. But I will view you as morally weak. that your army could not adapt to the changing battlefield situation. All the cool kids play tactical. The tactical way of playing it is to use the mission deck as a mission deck. You shuffle the secondary mission deck, you draw 2 in your command phase, your opponent has their own deck, that's why some of them are marked as attacker, some of them are marked as defender, but they are exactly the same mission regardless of whose deck they're in. Just in a different randomized order. Like it's a deck of cards. You draw 2 in your command phase. You can spend one of your command points to throw away one of them and get another one. This gives you more chance to score good points if there was something you didn't think you could do at any point in the game. Like the only enemy unit you could destroy to score Bring It Down was a Titan. Get a new card. You can keep a seemingly unlimited number of cards in your hand. However, you can score a maximum of 15 victory points in a battle round from secondary missions. It's good for the Host of Ascension detachment to store up some first turn secondary missions until I have more units on the board. Keep things like behind enemy lines. Even though I could discard behind enemy lines in the first battle round, I'd rather keep it and try and score it to get that 15 victory points in battle round 2 or battle round 3. Let's look at some of the cards and you will be able to spot where they're similar or different to 10th edition's mission deck. There's very similar names and tasks to do with minor differences. Like Assassination is the same. You get 3 victory points for each character you kill, or 4 victory points if that character had 4 or more wounds if you're doing fixed missions, and you get 5 victory points if you killed at least 1 character model in the turn. Beacon is a new secondary mission and not an action. We're not setting up a beacon. It's kind of like Marked for Death. You declare that one of your units on the table or in a transport will survive until the end of the enemy turn. It can't be the one hiding in your deployment zone, they can't stay in the transport, they have to be on the battlefield at the end, and you get more victory points if the unit is not within your territory. That is, your half of the table. In 11th edition, there is more end of enemy turn scoring. As you only get to pick the beacon unit when this card is drawn, if the unit was destroyed, I think the secondary mission can then no longer be scored even later in the game. You don't pick a new beacon unit. Behind enemy lines is no longer able to be taken as a fixed mission, but you want to pop onto the enemy side of the board. Scouting units can now redeploy in 11th edition into reserves instead of making a scout move. Although you can't ingress move into the enemy deployment zone until battle round 3, but if you get the card in turn 2, hold on to it and score it later. You get 5 victory points if you have 2 units, up from the 4 victory points in the 2025-2026 mission deck. Now we're on the 2026-2027 mission deck. Bring It Down is no longer about monsters or vehicles. It is any model with 10 plus wounds regardless of keywords. This stops Paragon Warsuits and Penitent Engines being part of the victory points of this card. You can discard it to get a new secondary card if there are no eligible units on the table, but if there is a Rhino in reserves, you may want to wait. You get 4 victory points for each eligible model destroyed if you're taking it as a fixed mission, 5 victory points for each destroyed model in tactical, but to a maximum of 5 victory points. So you can score it 1 time. I would only want to take this as a fixed secondary mission if the enemy had 5 or 6 eligible units at least. You know, like you're playing against knights. Burden of Trust is formerly a primary mission, now a secondary mission, and I think it works better as a one-off secondary. You choose units to guard objectives. That can be any objective, including your home. If the unit is in range of the objective and you control the objective at the end of your opponent's turn, you get 2 victory points for each of those objectives. See how this is easy for a take and hold player, but a Purge the Foe player will have to include units that can sit around for a turn in objective buildings and stay alive. Center Ground is a better name for area denial. You control the very center of the battlefield by having a unit there, not a battle-shocked unit, and there have to be no enemies within 3 inches, or you can get more victory points if there are no enemies within 6 inches. As the center is more highly sought after in 11th edition missions, this could be a bit harder to achieve than in 10th edition. Overwhelming Force is unchanged. Destroy enemies that start the turn in range of the objectives. 11th edition no longer treats characters and bodyguards separately. They are one unit from the start of the game. Objectives are bigger and are terrain that a lot of units will want to hide in, so more units will be eligible to be targeted. In No Prisoners, you need to kill some of the enemy at some point. You can't hide in objectives the whole game. You get 2 victory points for each unit killed this player turn, usually your own, But if you had a good round of combat in the enemy turn and destroyed 2 of their units, that is 4 victory points. Like overwhelming force, no longer is a distinction made between bodyguard units and other units. And because you can save up your cards, you don't have to score them immediately. If you killed 1 unit this turn and brought 3 others down to near destruction, choose not to score the secondary mission and wait until next turn when you can sweep all 3 away and score max victory points from the card. Cleanse is basically the same as in 10th edition. You do an action on objectives except your home objective. You can start it when you don't control it, as long as you control it at the end of your turn, like if another one of your units charged and killed the enemy that was also on the objective contesting it. And you can redraw if you are doing the other action mission right now, Plunder. But annoyingly, there doesn't appear to be a convenient symbol to tell you this is an action. Primary missions have that symbol. I don't know why this secondary doesn't. Plunder has the same rule. If you have Cleanse, you can discard this card. It's an action, but it doesn't need to be done on an objective. Any area terrain that's not in your territory. So that could be a barricade in the enemy deployment zone, and you get 5 victory points at the end of the turn. And you get 5 victory points at the end of your turn. Defend Stronghold no longer feels like a sad draw of, oh, I'm going to get 3 victory points. I'm going to have to wait and see if my opponent can nick that objective from me. Then I wouldn't even get the 3 victory points. But now you can score up to 5 victory points. At the end of your opponent's turn, you get 3 victory points if you control your home objective, and another 2 if there are no enemies within your deployment zone. It's really on the enemy to prevent this, but only for a time, as you can score this card on a future turn. If they sneak their last deep striking unit into your deployment zone, you can kill them in your coming turn, and wait until the end of their turn, then get 5 victory points, rather than scoring it immediately and getting 3. You still have to shuffle this back in for later if you drew it in the first battle round. Forward Position is the card opposite to Defend Stronghold. You're not expected to do it in the first turn, and you can redraw and shuffle to get a new card. You get victory points if you control your opponent's home objective, or each expansion objective. This is the card that explains what objectives are. This one is your opponent's home objective, these 2 are the expansion objectives, and you need to control each of them. The middle objective is then the central objective. There may be 2 central objectives on some maps. You don't need to care about the center for this one. Either your opponent's home objective, or the 2 side objectives in No Man's Land. Display of Might is changed. Rather than giving you 4 victory points for having more units than your enemy wholly within No Man's Land at the end of the turn, it's 2 victory points. But you can risk it. Wait for the end of the enemy turn, and if you still have more units, score 5 victory points. You may want to only push for the higher number of victory points in the first turn if you push the enemy back to their deployment zone and you have lots of infiltrators, or since you can save cards and you are a confident little sod, hold it until the end of the game when the enemy is basically wiped out and score at your leisure. If all the enemy is dead and you have at least 1 unit in No Man's Land, at the end of their turn, you have completed Display of Might for all of the victory points. Battleshocked units can't score, but units with objective control 0 can do. Ripper Swarms and Random Spore Mines will work. Engage on All Fronts has the same premise as the 25-26 mission deck. Like in 10th edition, you're wholly in a table quarter and have to be more than 6 inches from the center. There's no need to be a certain distance from other table quarters, as long as you're wholly within 1. You don't get any more victory points for having only 2 table quarters, you need units in 3 or 4. On a fixed mission, it's 2 victory points for 3 quarters, 4 victory points for all 4. Tactical gives you an extra 1 VP. 3 for 3, or 5 victory points for all 4 quarters. Score it whenever is convenient, but on tactical missions, you don't need to think about doing this immediately and throwing some units into the opponent's half of the board just to score a couple of victory points. You can wait until the end of the game to score the most, as long as you don't score more than 15 points in a single battle round from secondary missions. Outflank is rather like Containment from the Pariah Nexus mission deck of 10th edition, but it's not an action. The number of actions in secondary missions is greatly reduced in 11th edition. Actions are more tied to certain primary missions. To outflank, you need to have a unit within 6 inches of a battlefield edge and not in your territory. That's your half of the table. Do that and you get 3 victory points. So that could be the opponent's table edge. But to get the maximum 5 victory points, you need to have the opposite table edge as well. And that obviously can't be your board edge because that's within your territory. So you want the left and right side of the board, basically. Ingress Move On. That'll give you some victory points. it seems pretty easy to do. To secure No Man's Land in 11th edition, you have to actually secure it and control 2 objectives in No Man's Land. There is no victory points for only having 1 objective as there was in 10th edition. And if your home objective was partially within No Man's Land, that one doesn't count. I'm sorry that those are all of the secondary missions I've seen so far. From the 25-26 mission deck, I expect that Sabotage, Marked for Death, Cull the Horde, and Recover assets will be dropped, and Tempting Target, Storm Hostile Objective, Extend Battle Lines will stay, along with a reworked Established Locus, so it's no longer in action. There's fewer actions to do, and less stress of having to immediately complete these or having them lock down your hand. In 10th edition, if you couldn't score one of your 2 secondary missions, you would only draw 1 new secondary mission. That prevented you from scoring other secondary missions that may be easier. In 11th edition, I think 30 victory points should be manageable as long as you're not wiped out before the middle of the game, and you'll reach 40 or 45 if you were the player who wiped out your enemy, and you have a turn or 2 to score all the cards you've been collecting. You never have to score a card. You can wait for the opportune moment. Managing that so you don't score more than 15 victory points and keeping track of all your secondary options will be the real test. I like the look of this mission deck. I just hope Games Workshop has good core rule missions and has had the foresight to explain what the difference is between casual play and matched play, and which rules you use in each, even though they were going for a unified way to play. But my darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.